This is the universe speaking to you. You are now tuned into the Modern Spiritual Life Coaching Podcast by the certified master life coach and spiritual guide, Coach Chip. Welcome, souls. We now begin this episode of a transformational journey. Unedited, unscripted, and creating something from nothingness. Now, let there be light on Modern Spiritual Life Coaching.
We hope that you will enjoy and like this episode 111 of the Power Half Hour, the Saturday edition.
Oh, I'm slipping away, so don't let me go, nah. I'm all up in that love haze, so where do we go now? Just let me know that I am safe here in your arms. I wanna stay. I'm slipping away, so don't let me go now. The love is exceptional. It fills me up. It's out of control, Oh, baby, I love the rush. It overflows. It's out of control, I'm in love. I'm in love, yeah. I'm slipping away, yeah. Just like I am dreaming, walking around in this love haze. I wanna stay in this feeling, but let me know that I am safe here in your arms. I wanna stay. I'm slipping away, oh, so don't let me go now. Your love is exceptional. It fills me up. It's out of control, But baby, I love the rush. It overflows. It's out of control. Your love is exceptional. It fills me up. It's out of control, Oh, baby, I love the rush. It overflows. It's out of control, I'm in love. I'm in love. Deep in love with you, baby, yeah. 'Cause your love is exceptional. Ooh. It's out of control, It's out of control, but I love the rush, yeah. Out of control, Oh, it overflows. Ooh, your love is exceptional. It fills me up. It's out of control, but baby, I love the rush. It overflows. It's out of control. Yes, it's unknown. It fills me up. It's out of control. Baby, I love the rush. Come on, yeah. Out of control, I'm in love.
Now it's fun and easy to join the Modern Spiritual Podcast mailing list directly from your phone, like many are doing now. Just send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Try it now. Send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Message and data rates may apply.
It's Alchemy Coach Chip on this Power Half Hour of this Saturday edition, and we have a lot of great things coming up. We'll do a sound healing meditation coming up near the end of this episode. But in the meantime, what does alchemy mean, and where does it come from? Well, we're going to teach you about all of that here in the next 20 minutes, which is going to be amazing to you if you don't know what alchemist or alchemy means. It's exactly what we teach here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast. Before we get into this, I just want to let you know that Our website, themodernspiritualpodcast.com, is under construction right now. I'm supposed to put it up, and some other template got in the way of it. So if you see something a little different, don't worry about it. But by tonight and tomorrow, you're going to see a whole new look. It's going to blow you away. I do all the web designing and everything myself, and all the production work and everything here at this station. And I got a couple of great females that help out along the way. And you're about to see what really goes on here behind the Modern Spiritual Podcast. But let's get into this right now, the meaning of what alchemy means, right here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast Live.
This is where you will now understand what the true meaning of alchemy is. Right here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast Live. Alchemy. So how did alchemy start? Where did it come from? What are the origins of this thing? Anybody who's studying it might already know that most of the Western tradition, which is what we're following when we're researching alchemy, for the most part, has its origins in Egypt. And we know that because all the other alchemists throughout time tell us that comes from Egypt, and it's also prevalent in the name. We can see it in the name alchemy because we have our, which is an Arabic prefix, which means the but then chemia, or what was derived from the word chem, which is the ancient name for the land of Egypt. So we can see that even with the word alchemy, it's the art of Egypt. And the Arabic told us that in its word. So our starting story, our story starts, I should say, in Egypt. And from there we have alchemy as coming from the gods. So the Egyptians had all of these deities, these gods, but they called them netters and netters, where they were in nature spirits. So they were archetypes of nature. They were forces of nature. So naturally, these things just exist due to all these archetypes, these patterns, and this particular pattern, the archetype of Thoth, or the nature, spirit or duty that was embodied as thought. He was the father or the founder of alchemy. He gave to man all kinds of arts and sciences, like writing and music and geometry and different kinds of mathematics. So he is the fourth forefather of alchemy. And our story really starts with him from there in that time in Egypt. We also have the Greeks coming down through the Mediterranean Sea, and they are mingling with the Egyptians. They are sharing information, they are learning from each other. And they all kind of believe in this polytheistic deity concept, where there's multiple gods that rule over the forces of nature and make things be what they are and function the way they are. So in the Greek tradition, their version of Thoth was known as Hermes. So Hermes was also said to be the founder or the father of alchemy. In many texts have been attributed to Hermes throughout time, and they have all come together to make what is called the Corpus for Medical, which is a key foundational book in the study of alchemy and was passed around all through the ancient ages, kind of as like their version of a Bible. I suppose it's like a religious text that teaches them the rules and the laws of the universe. So from the Greek tradition, we have Hermes being the follower of alchemy. And this is also why today we can hear of alchemy as referred to as the Hermetic art. So the Hermetic art, where the arts of Hermes, or you also hear him referred to as Her Mistress Majesty's Hermes, the 3 times great. So the Hermetic arts of alchemy, all of these things have their origins in that ancient place in Egypt, and it's been passed down throughout time from the Egyptians to the Greeks, from the Greeks into the Arab-speaking countries, the Persian empires, and then eventually over into the European countries. And during the Renaissance, we see a lot of activity with alchemy. From here, though, if we want to understand what it is that alchemy is, we have to know what the founding fathers believe it to be. How did they describe their art and their practice? So we can go and we can look at that text that starts off this journey and alchemy. And if studying alchemy, you'll run into it. It's known as the Emerald Tablet, and it's attributed to Hermes, or some people also attribute it to Thoth since they're the same deity. So the Emerald Tablet of Hermes is said to hold the entirety of the philosophy and practice of alchemy, and that if you understand this text, you can decode all the secrets of nature and really start engage in the alchemical part. So we look into that Emerald Tablet, we can now understand how it is that this founding father, Hermes or Thor, believed his art to be. So I would like to ask that guy first. I'm going to do that by reading this text, looking at the Emerald Tablet. And it's a short text that has several paragraphs in it. But I'm just going to focus on the first top paragraph, which goes on to say that that which is above corresponds to that which is below, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and the accomplishment of the miracle of the one thing. So that's kind of the first opening lines of the Emerald Tablet. And surprisingly, within that little paragraph we have, the entirety of the alchemical are defined perfectly for us. It just might not be totally clear at the moment. So to understand what he's talking about, we need to know what did this person or what did these alchemists believe and understand the above and the below to be. How are they related? How are they corresponding? And how is the two of them together creating this accomplishment, which is this one thing? So by exploring the above and below, we can start to pull apart and dissect this small paragraph in this definition for what it is that alchemy is according to the traditional alchemical philosophies. So the above and the ancient world was known to many religions and spiritual practices as the heavens. It was the sky. It was the vaulted ceiling that contained the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets. It was an infinite landscape. And heaven, of course, is the abode of God, this invisible creator that we cannot really see, feel, touch, hear. But we know he's there, and we see his presence in all things. So it's the abode of God. It's the eternal infinite scape that God resides in and from where he projects his creations. So it's an invisible place. It's a place that exists inside, according to Jesus, he says the kingdom of heaven is within you. So it's the inside as well. So the above is the heavens. It is the sky. It is the cosmos and that infinite expression of the universe. And it is the internal landscape of the soul where we find the Creator. So that's how they view the above and contrast. The below is the earth. It is here. It is this physical manifestation. It is the land of mortals. It is the place where God places his creations, its physical form and matter. It's the density. So these two things, according to the Emerald Tablet, correspond and correspond, comes to us from a Latin word, two words together, core and respond. I'm paraphrasing here because they pronounced it differently. But to correspond with something means to be in union with it, to come together again and pledge that unity. So really, a union means that two perceived separate things are actually one thing. They're united, they're together. They are one. So the Emerald Tablet is telling us that the above and the below, they correspond. They are really the same thing, just maybe perceived as different. And together, these two perceived things, they accomplish the one thing. So what is that one thing? How do we finish this off? How do we understand what Hermes Earth is trying to tell us about what alchemy is? So to understand the one thing, we also have to delve into alchemical theory and principle. And alchemists believe that all things were created from one thing by one thing, and they called that thing the premium A. The first matter, it was the source of everything, the source of life, and everybody and their alchemical practices were searching for this prima materia. So the one thing is the prima materia. But that one thing was believed to express itself as three things. So this is where we get the concept of a trinity and all these different religions or medicinal practices. you see it in Chinese medicine, you see it in Christianity, you see it. And Ayurveda, it's all over the place. These three things, these three principles that point to the one thing. So alchemy has its three principles, its trinity. This one thing is expressing as these three to us, a principle is a foundational truth. So when you've used up all your cognitive reasoning, and you can no longer intellectually reduce the meaning or purpose of something, you hit a dead end. Then you have hit the dead end of the reasoning power, and you've come to a foundational principle of foundational truth. There's three things in the alchemical tradition that were inside all of everything, all creation. So everything in creation is made out of these three principles: every rock plant, every animal, every star, every person. Everything has these three principles at its core. And they named these principles. They give them code words. The code word for the first principle was sulfur. There's a little triangle with a cross underneath it to symbolize it. And the hieroglyph for the symbol folds all the information. But that can be reserved for another conversation where we can go into debunking kind of all the symbolism and what it means. But sulfur was the first principle, and sulfur was a code word for the soul. The second principle is known as mercury, and that was a code word for the spirit. And the third principle was the salt, which was a code word for the body. So if we want to understand what the one thing is, we have to understand its three principles, its three truths. And if we are to understand the three principles, we have to know what a body, a soul and a spirit are. So, each of these things has all these different ways of describing it. And if you ask any one person what is a soul, what is a spirit, he'll get different definitions. And most of those definitions won't agree. But many of them will also paint the soul and the spirit as being the same things. But by looking into the definitions, we can see exactly what these things are. And it's really easy to just go and look up. What is the body? What is the soul in a dictionary? And you can get these same definitions that I'm using right now. So the first one should be easy. The first principle of a body, which is the alchemical salt, because you see bodies all day, every day, you have a body, you interact with other bodies. You can move this body. This body can pick up another body and move it from place to place. So the body is pretty obvious. We see it, hear, feel it, know it, interact with it every single day. But when you go and define it, it becomes a little bit more elusive as to what it really is. So the definition for a body is a material structure that embodies or gives concrete reality to something abstract. Sounds pretty straightforward, but it gets a little weird if you're paying attention, because it says that the body is something that is giving a concrete reality to something that is actually not real, and abstract is just an idea. So a body is making an idea of the perceived as concrete, as real as actually here. But that's not really the case. So ideas are being structured and embodied according to the definition of body. And where do ideas come from? And that goes exactly into our next principle. So if our first principle of salt is just ideas being structured, well, then our next one leads into Mercury, which is the spirit. Where do ideas come from? Well, the spirit is defined as the mind very easily by most dictionaries. And the mind, of course, is what generates mental activity. And thoughts and ideas come from the mind. So the spirit is the mind. The mind is generating thoughts. Those thoughts are being structured, and they give the perception of a form, a concrete reality, which is the body. So really the body is just structured thought patterns and nothing more, and we're perceiving it to be real. So from there, if we were going to understand the next principle beyond spirit, what is sulfur? What is the soul? What we can look into our definition of spirit, which is the mind, and the mind is defined as an inherent faculty of consciousness. So that points to the final principle. The mind is an inherent power or faculty of consciousness. So consciousness inherently has the power to think. Thinking can be structured in those thoughts, can be embodied to give the concrete reality or appearance to an idea. So soul or sulfur becomes consciousness. Spirit, Mercury, the mind, is our second principle, and then the third principle, salt of the body, is just structured thought forms. So when we look at all three of these principles, and we go back to our first one, the soul consciousness, if you go and you define the word soul, soul is defined as the actuating cause. So that pretty much sums it up right there. Like sulfur, soul, consciousness is defined as the actuating cause of what? Of everything. It's the actual cause inherently starts thinking, and the thinking generates the form that it is perceived to embody. So that also points back to that one thing that we found in the Emerald Tablet, that one thing, the prima materia. Well, if it is believed to be the source, if it is believed to be the thing that all life is coming from and is giving life and giving manifestation, in reality, it's the backing to it all. It's the foundation to it all. If that thing is the actuating cause, the premium material, where we find that soul has the same definition, the actuating cause. So we know that soul and prima materia are now the same thing. So the soul or the consciousness must be the one thing. So if we go back and look at the Emerald Tablet now, and we know the above to be the heavens and the inside invisible infinite landscape, which is the source of the below, then it must be the actuating cause of the manifestation. So it is the soul. So the above is consciousness, and it corresponds or relates to the below, which is the manifestation and the body. So now we can redefine alchemy, and we can know what Fermi's Earth is telling us in the Emerald Tablet. And I'd like to define it nice and simply by saying that alchemy is the understanding of the relationship between consciousness and matter. So that should be our standard definition for alchemy. Now we know of all of its three principles, how the mind-body, or how the soul, the mind and the body all come together. And they make this one thing, this one experience. And that experience is coming from the soul. That soul is the prima materia. And when you learn about alchemy, engage in alchemy, do alchemy, what you're doing is you're applying your understanding of how consciousness relates to matter. How does it relate to matter through the mind? Mercury, because we know that soul generates the mind. The mind inherently has the power to think, and that generates matter or the impression of perceived form. So soul and matter are joined together by their bridge, which is Mercury and mythology. Mercury is the Roman version of Hermes. So now we have Mercury, Hermes and Thor. They are all the same guy. They are all the same deity, the same archetype. And Mercury, as we can see in our three principles, is defined as the mind. So the mythology points to this also being true. Mercury was said to be the messenger of the gods. He traveled back and forth between the realm of the gods in the eternal places, the infinite abode, the heavens that they lived in. He traveled from there down to earth, the physical manifestation, and he was the messenger of the gods. He bridged the gap between mortal man and immortal deity. So Mercury, the mind. Hermes thought all of these things. The same thing are how consciousness and matter are related. They are related through the mind. So that means that the Hermetic or alchemy is really a science of mind. It's an understanding of how consciousness relates to matter, which means we have to understand how the mind operates. When we understand how the mind operates, we can begin to do alchemy, as people say, engage in alchemy, apply alchemy outside of ourselves and inside of ourselves. Now you understand what and how alchemy is. Now back to Master Certified Alchemy Coach Chip on the Modern Spiritual Podcast Live.
And you're welcome. That's just, that's about what alchemy is, and that's what we practice here, and I do all the time. You go up to that next level, and after that next level, that gets to be really going deep. And it just keeps going and going and going with infinity, non-stop. So that's the end of this episode. Until Monday, when I come back with Happy Pandemic Monday on the Morning Gratitude on the Modern Spiritual Podcast, I bid you a good day and a good night wherever you are listening to us from around the world. Stay safe, and I'm going to leave you with a sound soul healing meditation. But first, I'm going to play this promo that we have about joining our email list through text now. You can use your phone to sign up. It's fast, it's easy, and you can do it anywhere that you have your phone. So in the meantime, till the next episode, I bid you a good day right here on the Modern Spiritual Podcast.
Now it's fun and easy to join the Modern Spiritual Podcast mailing list directly from your phone, like many are doing now. Just send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Try it now. Send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Message and data rates may apply. it's fun and easy to join the Modern Spiritual podcast mailing list directly from your phone, like many are doing now. Just send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Try it now. Send your email address by text message. Text Modern Spiritual to 22828 to get started. Message and data rates may apply.